What's up, y'all? Yes. Welcome here. Yes, welcome to another episode of Getting Stoned with your host, Mr. Stone Petoskey. Yeah, sending all y'all lots of love, lots of positivity, lots of good vibes. Hope you're having a beautiful day. The sun is shining, the weather is sweet. Makes me want to move my dancing feet. Yeah. Thank you so much for stopping on by. You know how much I appreciate y'all. Anyone who takes a moment of their time to drop on by and give my little show here a listen. I love y'all. I love y'all for that. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Sending you all that goodness, blessings, and of course, you know how it is, a big hug. Yeah. Hug it out now. Come on. Yes. Ooh, feels so good to hug. Yeah, know you are loved. That's what I say. Know you are loved. You are loved. You are made in love, by love, for love, forever love. Yeah, no doubt about it, y'all. No doubt about it. Believe it, know it, live it, be it. Because it's a fact. Love. Exciting and new. Come aboard, we're expecting you. Yeah, well, I just got a little bit silly right there. Couldn't help myself. Because, you know, you got to be silly in life. Don't be taking this shit too seriously, y'all. I've definitely been guilty of that. And it's not something, you know, I still fall into it from time to time. I think it's, you know, just sort of a kind of one of those things that just was how it was for me. And, you know, I've learned to take this shit way less seriously. Life is, it's a trip, man. It's a trip. Of course, there's a lot of suffering and struggle and strife, but it's best if you can find a way through it all where you're not taking it seriously. You know, you're not having attachments to it all and expectations about how it all should be. Things of that kind of vibe, it just makes it harder, and I speak from a lot of experience around that one, man. You know, this is a game to be played, you know, as Alan Watts would say. You know, this is, you know, we're here to play, and I really do believe that. And you know, I'm not saying, you know, you don't acknowledge the pain and the heartbreak and those kinds of things, and I'm not saying that it's just, don't get lost in all that stuff. It's life is a beautiful journey. It's very short. This planet is a miraculous orb in infinite space, and there's so many things here to experience and find the joy in. And you know, so share that. You know, smile at one another. Get your hands dirty. You know, walk barefoot on the earth, and you know, dance naked in the sunshine. You know, get to work. You know, I'm a firm believer in putting in a good day's work. That's for sure. That builds character, gives you a sense of purpose. So I'm not saying just lazy around and what have you. Although there is a time and a place for that. But by all means, do not take this shit seriously, y'all. Yeah. Have a sparkle in your eye, a twinkle in your heart, you know, a skip in your step. Because however long you are going to be here, it ain't going to be very long. So do what you can to find the joy, to share the joy, the laughter. Because there's going to be plenty of tears. We all know that. So I was thinking this thing here real quick, so I was saying, you're in this beautiful orb, this miraculous, like, everything is perfectly aligned with the distance from the sun and, the temperature and the soil and the water and the plants and the animals and the minerals, and it's just, I don't know, to me, heaven is here on earth in that way. This planet is insanely incomprehensible, how everything perfectly came together to allow life to be. And I think humans, man, we be tripping, man. I mean, obviously, you look around these days, we tripping really bad. And one of the things I was kind of vibing on that earlier today is this whole notion of, like, we take this planet, right, and we arbitrarily draw all these lines on it, and we say that this is my country and this is my state, or this is mine, and it's not yours. And I mean, if it doesn't take long to think on that and see how fucking hilarious that whole notion is. First of all, just drawing the lines in and of itself is absurd. It's all made up. It isn't real, right? But then to take it how far we've taken it, like where we think we can own something, like we can own the earth, like this is bizarre. We can't own the earth. It's impossible, y'all. You can't own this earth. Nobody can, ever, right? And then we'll go and we'll do the craziest shit of all, is we'll like kill each other over these arbitrary lines we've drawn on this beautiful planet. Like, we literally will kill. We're doing it right now. We're fucking killing each other, women, children, just slaying them because of these imaginary lines that we've drawn on this earth, and our belief about what that means, and it's mine and it's yours and you can't have it, makes me think of, like, when I was in grade school, man. We'd go out on the playground and, like, somebody would start a beef with somebody. Like, it would be the most ridiculous thing. Like, you stole a French fry off your, friend's plate at lunch, and then you'd go out onto the playground and, like, boom, someone come up and shove you behind you and, like, you took my French fry, and then you'd wrestle and, what have you. And except what we've done is we've created, first of all, we've got all these, like, insane weapons of just, like, mass destruction, right? I mean, we could annihilate all life on the earth with the weapons we've made now, that we brought to life. Seriously, one push of a button, two pushes, whatever, boom, we just annihilate the whole planet. All right? Humans are done out of our fucking minds, man. Like, what is that? We can't even, like, look at what, like, just this tiny little topic I'm talking about right now. We can't step back, open our hearts and our minds, look into the eyes of each other, no matter what nation you're from, what color the skin is, who you want to make love to, just irrespective of all of that stuff, and just be like, yo, wait, man, come on, let's just put all this shit down. Come on. This is just nonsense here, So I think to me, it's like, it's a consciousness thing. And it's a consciousness thing of where we are in a consciousness of fear and scarcity, and we're lost. And it's really, I mean, in a way, to me, it's kind of pathetic at this point that we can't seem to find our way clear of it. I don't know, man. It trips me out. But again, don't take this shit seriously. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. That's fine, but don't take it seriously. But don't ignore it at the same time, you know what I'm saying? It's like, don't pretend it doesn't exist. Don't turn away from the absurdity of man and the two-legged animal. We are unequivocally the most insane creature that really, in my opinion, the only insane animal that's ever existed. You know, no other animals do this. Not even close. Nothing even, they don't. We're the ones. Now why that is, that's a whole other conversation. I don't have the answers on that one, so, you know, don't come looking to me for them. But in any case, just one little thing I was thinking about today where I was, you know, as I often do, I just be tripping. And my mind goes somewhere, and so just throwing it out there to you. Something to think about. Love. L-O-V-E, love. All right, so we're gonna read from a book. It's this dude this cat, man. He blows my mind. I was fortunate enough to meet him. I went to he had a concert. He's a writer. He's a performer, but he was a social he calls it. He worked in the death trade. He worked, you know, in death and dying and you know, hospice care and things of that nature. His name is Stephen Jenkinson. He's a Canadian, just like my old man was. And this dude is just, man, I can't say enough good things about this brother. I'm trying to remember the tour that he did with this band. I went and saw Nights of Grief and Remembrance. No, that ain't it. Anyways, check him out, man. Stephen Jenkinson. This brother, he is wise and wonderful and gentle and strong and courageous and easeful. Yeah, get hip to this cat, man. He's the real deal. So I'm gonna read a little bit from his book called Die Wise, a manifesto for sanity and soul, and I'm gonna hop to the chapter titled The Tyrant Hope. See, he speaks on hope in a way that I completely and totally resonate with. I've always had a beef with the word hope and how we look at it and how it defines so much of things, and I don't dig it, you know. I got things about it that just don't sit right with me, with this whole hope word and what it means and all that kind of business. And so he writes about it in a way in this chapter that I think is just absolute brilliance, and so I want to share a little bit of it with you. All right, so the Tyrant Hope. The ability to wonder, if I put it like that, it probably doesn't sound to you too much like an advanced skill. It probably sounds more like the ability to land on the ground when you fall, more inevitable than skillful. My wife says that the world would be a kinder place if every man had a tractor. And all I can add to that is that the kindness would be guaranteed if every man was full of wonder when riding it. It is my experience that the capacity for wonder might be something we share with everything that is holy, and something that is easily and early forsaken by people and times where technique and information are boss. Wonder is part fascination, part ability to believe in things as they are, part willingness to be confused, even devastated at times, by the epic mysteriousness of ordinary things. The work of dying that each dying man or woman or child must do demands of each of them some ability to be drawn in, overwhelmed, sometimes devastated, and always awestruck by the ordinary death that underwrites their lives. The same is true of their caregivers. Wonder is the sum of life's way of being itself, washing up on the shore of what you've known until now. leaving handfuls of treasure scattered among the small boulders of what you were sure of. You gather some of that treasure for no reason you can figure without telling anyone, and stash it under the pillow of your dreams for a time not quite yet upon you. Wonder is a willingness decked out as a skill to be on the receiving end of how vast the world always is, and of how unlike your ideas of how it should be, it often is. When I was very young, I, probably like you, thought about a lot of things that, so far as I knew, no one else seemed to be concerned about. A few of them were the "why is the sky blue" kind, or the "if the earth is rotating, how come I don't get dizzy" kind. These questions get your young wondering muscle tuned up for its possible future employment in the ragged enterprise of trying to be a real, useful human being in the world. If you are lucky enough to be born into a place and time and people that make room for wonder in their schemes and plans. The adults around you and I, though, had found little or no employment for their wondering muscle in the graying, flattening, rationalist, and literalist project of getting a job and fitting into this part of the world, just as it had been for their elders as well, and so on. So these questions of mine didn't find any similar surviving wonder in most of the people I asked. When I asked those kinds of questions, as if much depended on the answers I got solved the problem of my young confusion by slaying the wonder that lay at the heart of the question. The physics of the answers I got, what rotates around what, how the atmosphere distorts, bled mystery out of the world, turned the world into a machine, and sedated wonder with information. Information is where wonder often goes to die. There are tens of thousands of 7-year-old poets in any large town or small city, staggering under the weight of the sheer mystery of ordinary things, but only a few handfuls of 40-year-old poets there, shuffling their feet through the gravity of their times, fallen leaves in the gutter as the days grow shorter. The greatness of a great question is that it can survive any and all answering, and still be left standing after the debates and harangues and rationalist assaults have bashed away at it. There are no great answers, you could say, but only great questions made greater when their answerers are nobly defeated by the awe and mystery of the way things are. Great questions are not problems to solve any more than great feasts are problems for stomachs to solve. They are not looking in the web of our intelligence, waiting to be filled with more intelligence. Great questions, given half a chance, are our intelligence. Intelligence should not be a siege machine in the efficiency army's assault on the tower of what we don't know yet, though in our time and place it is mostly that. Great questions are a proper throne for wonder, and there is much in our life that needs our wonder and deserves it, just as we ourselves deserve the capacity for wonder that came to us early on, but does not often survive our education. A great question happened to me as a child. I still love it. It is still great to me, and it is still a question. Can soap be dirty? I know it doesn't sound like much, but there's something there. You might remember that bar of soap in the bathroom in any public place and say emphatically, "Yes, soap can be dirty. I saw it." But if you stay with the question a little longer, you might start to wonder whether the dirt on the soap makes the soap dirty, or whether the dirt has to be in the soap somehow to make it dirty. Then you might go further and wonder whether it isn't in the nature of soap to be cleanliness itself, so that soap will always be clean and dirt will always be on the outside of soap looking in. These are the kinds of things I wondered about as a kid, anyway. Hope is the soap of palliative care, in a way. Hope is often the tower of sand where most dying people live out their days, staring through a small window down onto the fields of the longed-after things that will come no closer, and the hated and feared things that will gather there instead. Hope is the siren song of anyone who loves a dying person, the conjuring chant taken up in the name of compassion. The preservation of hope is the base element in any plan made for dying people by the people paid to care for them. It is the root condition for proceeding. That is the conviction of most of us, dying or not. Hope is life-loving, and it cannot be otherwise. Without hope, they say, what's the point? And it's always a rhetorical question. In my years at the bedside and at the podium in palliative care, I have never heard hope wondered much about, or challenged, or talked about as if it were anything other than goodness incarnate and the secret ingredient that makes Maslow's hierarchy of needs and living and dying make sense. A few years ago, some researchers proposed to test what variable had the most significant impact on physicians' ability to accurately predict the course of their palliative patients' disease trajectory. One of the things they discovered in their test group was that the prognostic accuracy decreased in an overly optimistic direction the longer the patient-physician relationship went on. As a physician spent more time with their terminally ill patients and with the patient's test results and lab work and family and history and hopes and fears and care plan, the physician's estimation of how much more time the patients were likely to have changed apace. And this shift is the estimated time a patient had left was almost always, as the researchers call it, overly optimistic. The doctors consistently tended to grant more time to the patient, and the patients consistently tended not to live the more time granted to them. The physician's prognostic accuracy seems actually to have been compromised by prolonged exposure to the patient. On the surface, at least, that feels odd. If you are a patient, you want the physician to spend a lot of time with you and your chart, believing as you would that more familiarity can only help matters. The physician likely believes the same thing in principle, and time and workload permitting will try to gain that familiarity by putting that time in. How could prognostic accuracy become compromised by prolonged exposure to the patient? And why does the compromise tend toward granting more time to a patient's life? Maybe it is because increased exposure to the patient tends to have the effect of binding the physician more strongly to the patient's views and wishes for his or her care plan. And maybe this tends to compromise the physician's judgment as to prognosis to make it more consistent with the patient's wishes. As time goes on, the physician's experience, judgment, and training all seem to get hitched to the bandwagon of encouragement, support, and cheerleading the patient in pursuit of what the patient wants. And if the patient is, quote, negative and has a grim or overly realistic view of what it is to come, the physician will again tend toward advocating a more hopeful outlook in the patient. The belief being that only good can come from being realistically hopeful. The article seemed to strongly suspect that what the patient wishes for is contagious, but I think the dilemma it describes goes a little deeper. Medical training is thorough in most things. I don't think it is very likely that most physicians would confuse their training and experience with their patient's wishes. There is a subtler something going on with this. It is not the content of what is wished for, the grail of more time, that is contagious. The fact that the patient steadfastly wants what is already gone for good, often long after it is gone, perhaps this is the contagious thing. The patient's insatiable desire for what will never be makes the doctor's simple objectivity and prognosis look and feel ineffectual, impotent, even disloyal. Many a physician has been accused of giving up on patients when they attempt to refer those patients to palliative care. It looks as though sympathy and discernment are hard bedfellows where dying is going on. The consequence of this conflict, I have seen this many times, tends to be that the physician will delay referring a terminally ill patient to a palliative care service. For any patient who is paying attention, this referral is the end of the physician's willingness to go along with the program for more time. Patients' desire for a close, more personal relationship with their physicians seems often to compromise the physician's judgment. It challenges the very firmly entrenched belief in palliative care circles that the physician must establish a relationship of trust with the patient prior to being able to break bad news. Usually that trust depends on physicians clearly aligning themselves with the patient's views and wishes regarding their prognosis and not prematurely challenging those views and wishes. This relationship of trust, it requires time to be established. It's built on the assumption that there is more time and will be. It is built on the conviction that what the physician knows of what is to come must at least for a while take a back seat to the principle of maintaining that trust. When is a good time for prognostic candor? When will the old relationship of trust be challenged by a new willingness to be honest with the patient about what the physician has known all along? Will the patient's hope ever legitimately be undone by the physician's training, experience, judgment, and counsel? Is maintaining hope what the helping professions owe people who are dying? Years later, some research was done on the subject of what patients want to be told by their physicians about their diagnosis and prognosis. It found that patients wanted clarity, precision, lots of information, an accurate prognosis, measured but full disclosure of the nature, consequences, and outcomes of their disease. And they wanted their overall hopefulness about their outcome left intact and supported and sustained throughout the process of their dying. Now, on the face of it, this can't be done. There are two solutions that I've seen used over and over. In the first, the physician isn't entirely candid about the prognosis. In the second, the patient is more or less gently prodded into shifting the content of the hope to something more realistic, given, and likely. Doctors and social workers usually invoke a patient or family-centered model of care that places the patient at the center of the care plan as its co-author and quality control person. This solution looks concerned and compassionate and gives candor its proper junior position in the scheme of what the patient deserves. A second solution is to periodically recalibrate the content of hope, the hoped-for thing, to compensate for the ongoing failure of the care plan to achieve or sustain patient health. This solution looks discerning, and it recalibrates the patient's wishes by invoking the principle of, quote, realistic hope. Each of these solutions and all others that I have seen in my years in the death trade accepts in principle and without qualification the presence and the necessity of hope in the work of helping someone die. There is everywhere I look an uncritical unwillingness to support the Hope Project because there is everywhere a belief that hope is inherently good, inherently helpful, and inherently necessary, especially in the face of this most trying of life's travails. Wherever hope is discussed, it is discussed in terms of its content, but rarely in terms of its function. There is strong belief in the palliative care community that a great leap forward has been made when a patient is encouraged to change what he or she hopes for as their dying comes on. Nowhere that I know of is there much discussion of what hope does to someone who is dying hopefully. Everyone's hope function is tied to its content. If your hope is for something that is foreseeable or possible, however exaggerated your sense of the foreseeable might be, you ought to be hopeful, and that'll be good for you. But what does it do to you to be hopeful that way? You know how it is when you have a mortgage. Many things that once were possible are no longer possible. Once you did things that now, for good reason, you no longer will do. You will put things on hold, you will wait, you will do without, you will do less with less, and all of this you'll do because the mortgage gives you some guarantee that the sacrifices you are making will come out well in the end. You live in your mortgage, and because of that, one day, all going well, and you don't sell, it will become your house. Hopeful people generally have their one good eye on a future they imagine. The more jaundiced eye on a present they mostly tolerate. And both eyes on a past they have a hard time remembering well and letting go of. Hopeful people do not, as a rule, hope for what they have. They hope for what they do not have. They hope for what they once had to come again. Hopeful people do not, in their hopefulness, often vote yes to the present. They vote for the future. Even those with a greater agility of hope, who hope for more of what they have, they are still voting for a future in which to have it. Here is the connection. Hope is a mortgage. It is not like a mortgage. It is a mortgage. Hope is a mortgaging of the present for the sake of some possible future that might come to pass and just as likely might not. Being a hopeful person with a terminal diagnosis means that, like those doctors in the study, you are in some mysterious and compelling way not allowed to know what you know when you are dying. In a death-phobic culture like our own, knowing you are dying is not as healthy as hoping you aren't dying while you are. When hopeful people are dying, and when dying people are hopeful, they buy a house on a street called Not Now, in a town called Not Yet, according to a Freedom 55 investment plan called Anywhere But Here. They become fighters, and the obligation they hold their families, friends, and caregivers to is that there be nothing but positive, upbeat, hopeful talk around them, no matter the diagnosis, prognosis, symptom buildup, or failing strength, phantom capacity, or fugitive alertness, until they themselves give the unequivocal signal that they have given up hope. As long as you are hopeful, you are never in the land of you hope for. If you bargain for more time, you never live in the land of more time. Your more time is spent bargaining or praying or hoping for more time. No one seems to hope for what they have, and hopeful dying people rarely get the more time they hope for, no matter how much more time they get. This understanding was inside the question I was asking the Filipino lady. What you want rarely looks like what you get, but it almost never looks that way to hopeful dying people. In the bargain for more time is a gamble for more life. in oncology, in palliative care, in my foxhole. More life is the reward of more time, so the hope goes. But more life at the end of your life is lived in the distinct, ample, palpable presence of your death. And the chances are very good that if you are a dominant culture North American, you have not lived your life in the presence of your own death much before your diagnosis, if at all. So your more life is asking something of you that no one warned you about, that no one around you probably understands or has thought much about. It is asking something of you that you have not much experience with, something that will probably show you to be the inelegant amateur that you are in this epic waning of your days. Your more life, it turns out, includes more death. A lot more death than you ever imagined could be in your life. As you try to live this thing that was to be its own fine reward, you find that more life is mostly more death. They were quick to offer you chemotherapy or radiation for your more life, but there aren't many offers teaching you how to have more death. The doctors and the psychiatrists and the counselors are not unkind in this, certainly not knowingly or purposefully. They are not people living in a place called more life without holding something from a dying person living in a land called more death. They don't have some secret strategy to support. No. Paid therapists and physicians and volunteers and families and dying people are mostly hopeful people in the time of more death. And hope has often numbed many of them to the understanding of what more death means. Hope is contagious, and it is to me a kind of obscenity at a time like that. Hope is an anesthetic of the spirit. Many people are fearful that if they speak of dying in a clear way at the wrong time, they will disarm dying people at the very time they are supposed to be fighting. I've seen many times that family members and healthcare workers secretly believe that to speak of dying is to approve of dying, that grotesque word voodoo that mutes most of us when dying is in the room. And so the knowledge of the thing goes AWOL, and we wait for the riptide of symptoms and diminishing energy and lucidity to dare the dying person to learn how to do it with whatever is left of their capacity and their willingness to learn. Hope almost always makes sure that it is too late to learn how to die for dying people in a death-phobic culture. That is what it does to them, turning away from learning how to die well in the name of being hopeful. Dying people consume probably as many antidepressants and as much anti-anxiety medications as do late middle-aged people who have lost whatever they once had of a feel for why they are alive. Somewhere in the mall of hope, and research will someday show this to be true, this culture is incubating a considerable demand for physician-assisted suicide and for terminal sedation among dying people that cannot be explained by a concomitant increase in their symptoms or pain. How could it be otherwise, then, that dying people and the people who love them and the people paid to care for them often understand dying as nothing more than a challenge to endure, as the low-grade curse of the passing of time when the prayers and the gambles for more time come to pass? More extraordinary than Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's ideas in On Death and Dying, by far was the unqualified mass market embrace these ideas enjoyed soon after they were published and continue to enjoy across the dominant culture of North America and beyond. Wherever I teach, there are large numbers of people who can quote the stages without ever having read the book, sounding as though they are reading from the book when they do so, many of them not knowing that there is a book that these ideas come from. The ideas in On Death and Dying were timely, but does that account of the massive influence they have? I don't think so. In unpublished research, Dr. Michelle Caban has argued persuasively that Kubler-Ross's ideas were derived largely from her early work with people who had escaped a nightclub fire that had killed others and who were subsequently experiencing what we would now call post-traumatic stress disorder. Kubler-Ross seems to have identified the PTSD sufferers as people who had nearly died. People who are close to dying people are not nearly dying themselves, though, and that is one dilemma in the scheme. The patients she worked with were never dying. They were exposed to what killed other people and were traumatized by that, surely, but it is very possible that they were not traumatized by dying. Kubler-Ross appears to have applied these ideas about coping with trauma to the experience of nearly dying, and she found what to her were compelling similarities. So it seems were born the famous 5 stages and the discussion around them. Kubler-Ross seems to me to have counted on the fact that dying was inherently a traumatic event, that it was in the nature of dying itself that the trauma was to be focused. She then seems to have generated a strategy for purposeful coping, the 5 stages, to manage that trauma. But ask yourself whether dying is universally traumatizing across all cultures and times. It is not so. It is not so even here, where it is so rampant, and I cannot credit On Death and Dying for these exceptions. Dying is traumatizing when it is happening in a place and time that will not make room for dying in its way of living. It is not dying that is traumatic. It is dying in a death-phobic culture that is traumatic. The continuing extraordinary popularity of some of the ideas on death and dying are partly a result of the fact that the author's assumptions of the trauma of dying has found easy recognition and acceptance among people who have lived a death-phobic life and believe likewise. This death-phobic culture recognizes the trauma unto death sold in the book in its own experience. Look carefully in the tables of contents of palliative care textbooks, read the mission statements of palliative care agencies, study the best practice manuals of palliative care associations. Explicitly or otherwise, you will find that most of them accept without pause that dying is trauma. What they prescribe is management strategies for that trauma, for the physical and metaphysical consequences of that trauma. Cope, hope, dope. The trivializing trinity, the bar stool for dying people to teeter on in a place that will not tolerate death. So, a culture that sells hope to dying people is selling them anesthesia and management. Hope, as much as anything else, and more than most, traumatizes people at the end of their lives. Hope, like any good shuck and jive artist, sells itself and its absence as the only 2 options in town. In our good binary oppositional style of argument and contention, many of us imagine for dying people and the people who love them only hope or hopelessness. Either the faint possibility that things can be otherwise, or the withering misery of being pinned by the brute fact that they will not be. In a death-phobic culture, dying is not a credible outcome. Dying is giving up, and hope is refusing to give up. In the healthcare system of a death-phobic culture, dying is where the healthcare ends, because dying has no place in any understanding of health. We have strategies for not dying instead, and hope is a large part of the creed that informs those strategies. It can make you crazy being hopeful, and when you are dying in our part of the world, it often does. One alternative is first to wonder our way out of this false choice that we are offered when we are dying. Hope is not life, and hopeless is not death and depression. Hope is very often a refusal to know what is so, and steadfastly it is a refusal to live as if the present moment is good enough and all we really have. Hopeless is the collapse of that refusal, and it looks a lot like depression. The alternative is to live your life and you're dying hope-free. If you are willing to seriously wonder about what being hopeful has done to you, what it has obliged you to know and not know, how it has hamstrung the caregivers of dying people and their loved ones who are only allowed to know what they know when they are not with them, then being willing to be hope-free begins to look more like a subversive move toward lucidity. Living and dying hope-free. That is a revolution. The chance to die that way is what dying people deserve. Well, well, well. I got nothing to add on to that. You might have to listen to that a time or two more to really grasp what Mr. Stephen Jenkinson is getting at. But my brother is spot on, and I'm immensely grateful that he shared his wisdom and his words and his heart and his love, because it really touched me deeply and helped me fully embrace living and dying with a hope-free perspective. And that is the revolution that I stand by. Hope-free, motherfuckers. Hope-free. I want to live in the present. Because present is all there is. And I sure as fuck ain't afraid of death. In fact, I believe that death is the ultimate, most beautiful, most sublime, most far fucking out, incredibly divine, delicious, delightful experience that each of us will ever have. And it sure shit ain't nothing to be afraid of. It's coming for all of us, y'all. All right, I'm gonna read me a poem here. As you know, I always do that. This brother Robinson Jeffers, this is a poem that he wrote, and this cat is. It ties in with what I just read from Die Wise by Stephen Jenkinson. This poem here I'm gonna drop on you now by Mr. Robinson Jeffers is entitled Post Mortem. Happy people die whole. They are all dissolved in a moment. They have had what they wanted. No hard gifts. The unhappy linger a space, but pain is a thing that is glad to be forgotten. But one who has given his heart to a cause or a country, his ghost may spaniel it a while, disconsolate to watch it. I was wondering how long the spirit that sheds this verse will remain, when the nostrils are knit, when the brain rots in its vault, or bubbles in the violence of fire to be ash in metal. I was thinking some stalks of the wood whose roots I married to the earth of this place will stand 5 centuries. I held the roots in my hand, the stems of the trees between my 2 fingers. How many remote generations of women will drink joy from men's loins and dragged from between the thighs of what Mothers will giggle at my ghost when it curses the axeman. Gray, impotent voice on the sea wind when the last trunk falls. The woman's abundance will have built roofs over all this foreland, will have buried the rock foundations I laid there. The woman's exuberance will canker and fail in its time, and like clouds, the houses unframed. The granite of the prime stand from the heaps, come storm and wash clean. The plaster is all run to the sea, and the steel all rusted. The foreland resumes the form we loved when we saw it. The one at the end of the age and far off from this place should meet my presence in a poem. The ghost would not care but be here. Long sunset shadow in the seams of the granite, and forgotten the flesh, a spirit for the stone. Robinson, Jeffers. Thank you, brother. Ooh, man, this one has hit me, man. Anytime, oftentimes I read Stephen Jenkinson, I'm always like, it hits deep. And Robertson Jeffers, the same. That brother, yeah. So I'm gonna sing a song, kind of in keeping with the general vibes of the show today. This song's called Standing Rock. It's an original tune I wrote a while back. We drill holes into turtle island, suck out all blood, and we burn it, smoke fills the sky, this no good can come. I took a nap, poured some water to the soldiers on the other side. They sprayed pepper in my face. The two-leggeds have gone blind. Water is life, any which on me. Water is life, many which on me. Water is life, many which on me. We gotta take a stand for this holy land, cede not to the demands. Everyone join hands. Time time is now to live for the seventh generation. Mother Earth is calling to us. There is no separation. Water is life, many which only. 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 Water is life, y'all. Water is life. Thank you all for listening today. I appreciate it. I send all y'all lots of love. Lots of love, y'all. And a big hug. Know you are beautiful. Know that you matter. Know that you are love. You are light. You are divine. You are eternal. Until next time, brothers and sisters, this is Stone Petoskey saying peace.